Alright, let's get to the point. I'm gonna talk about Dapple dualies. Let's go. Alright, let me start off by saying I am nowhere near like Pro Chara level or anything like that. I have been playing tons of X battles recently, and I am getting in about the 2000 power range. I used to not play a lot of X battles in Splatoon 2 because it kind of freaked me out and I was very timid about losing rank, but at this point I'm getting good enough at the game where I can just play and not really worry about it. Of course, I still have a lot of problems, like I still tilt and rage at the game sometimes, and I'm working on my aim and how to be a better player, but I think I have enough experience with this weapon to talk about how to play it, its strengths and weaknesses, and why it's worth it if it's something you really want to commit your time to, which is a very important part about this video. So let's start off with talking about the weapon. The weapon is super short-ranged and kind of outranged by almost everything in the game, and if you play it correctly, that doesn't have to be a weakness. If you're losing a game because the weapon is designed a certain way, that means that you can't play around the way the weapon is designed and you need to switch off of it. I know that that's kind of straightforward and blunt, but it's the truth. This weapon is super hard to play. People might not realize how hard it is to play, especially in this game, but in Splatoon 3 it's extremely hard to play this weapon. In Splatoon 2 it was also hard to play the weapon, especially because of MPU damage up, which is a whole other thing. But now, the main problem is stuff like backlines being super OP and the maps being weird. Dapple dualies are just always going to be an outclassed weapon that are extremely difficult to master, but once you master them, you can really surprise your opponents because of one thing. Almost everyone who plays this game thinks you suck at the game if you play Dapples. If you can go above this stigmatism and actually become a good player with this weapon, you'll become a god among the squids. Now, we're not going to be talking about the blue kit, the Dapple Nouveau kit, because I don't think it's super worth it. It is worth it in some modes, and I think its sub-weapon is really good for it, but the special weapon is the thing that's keeping me from playing the kit whatsoever. Of course, there's the whole Tetra thing. Like, we know that the reason why this weapon isn't worth it is because Tetra's in the game. I was super excited when the blue kit came out. I was ready for it to have a decent special, maybe like Zuka or Killer Whale or whatever, Zipcaster, even though I don't really want Zipcaster on it. I was prepared for something good like that, but we didn't get it, and that's fine. But right now, the kit that's more versatile is the OG kit. This kit is super weird, and a lot of people thought it was bad at launch, but it's actually not. This kit has an insane amount of playstyles that the other kit could just never dream of having. There's so many different ways to play this weapon, and it's about picking which one is going to work for you and which one works for certain maps and modes. You can't really play the same playstyle of the V kit on every single map and mode. You're going to have to switch up your gear, and that's another commitment thing, is you're going to have to make multiple gear sets for this thing. And that's why I think it's worth trying, is just because you can really build around the weapon to help your team out. Because remember, as a Dapple, the V Dapple kit with the beacon and the tacticooler, you are not just a straight Slayer, you are a Slayer support hybrid. The weapon has some insane DPS that is completely unmatched by any other weapon. Also, the insane mobility and the support kit allows it to play really weirdly but effectively in certain situations. Now, the table of contents of this video is going to go something like this. First, we're going to talk about the kit of the weapon, how to use it, and what its strengths and weaknesses are, the different playstyles of the weapon, and your gear abilities and what you should be running on it. Next, I'm going to talk about each mode and how it can be good and how it can be bad on those specific modes, and then we're also going to talk about some weapon matchups and what it's good against and what it really struggles against. Maybe I'll do another video on the Nuevo kit when I really get the chance to play the weapon more, but as of now, it's really something that doesn't interest me. So without further ado, let's get into it. First, we're going to start with the kit of the weapon. Like I mentioned, the main weapon has extremely high DPS and super short range, but some of the best mobility and damage in the game. If this thing gets close to you, you're completely dead, provided you can aim your shots and catch your opponents off guard from certain angles that they can't really see you coming from. As a Dapple dualie, you are a ninja glass cannon. And the support kit is weird for it to be on a Slayer type weapon, but we'll get into why that helps it in certain ways in a second. The sub-weapon is Squid Beacon, which is honestly my favorite sub-weapon in the game. It has the best sub power-up effect of all time, which we'll talk about later. But the sub is something that you can really help your teammates out, and it can also be used as a pseudo shield, but that's not something you should be doing all the time. The special weapon is Tacticooler, which basically buffs your whole team, provided they go and get the drinks. But this basically allows your team to be reckless, a little bit more reckless than usual, because it gives you a ton of quick respawns, so if you do mess up, you're coming back even if you get respawn punished. Respawn Punisher is kind of in the meta right now with a lot of backlines, and being able to negate it is super important. Now, the playstyles that revolve around Dapple is really gear dependent. The whole weapon is super gear dependent, especially this variant with the beacon and the Tacticooler. So the first playstyle that a lot of people do is sub power up beacons. Sub power up on beacons lets anyone jump to the beacon extremely fast depending on how much you have. One main of it is an extremely noticeable effect, and if you add even a few more subs, it can be super fast. Two mains is absolutely ridiculous, but you might not need that much of it for all situations. The next strat which really helps out the weapon is just QR Slayer. You can run like one main and 3 subs of quick respawn to actually help the weapon a lot, because it allows you to mess up without getting affected too much. If you don't get kills, it's okay. You can come back. You don't have to worry about it. One thing that really pisses off Dapple mains is dying and not affecting the board. So if you mess up and you die, because you will mess up, this is a weapon that requires a lot of positioning and awareness and skill, that if you do mess up, it's going to suck. But you are going to mess up, and if you do, quick respawn really helps. You can also play the weapon kind of like a Tetra when you have it. The next two playstyles kind of go together with each other. The next one is special spam. You can run tons of special charge up and special saver, and maybe some special power up kind of, but like not too much. When you do this, it allows you to have Tacticooler available all the time, which basically gives you hyper quick respawn playstyle. However, you need to have Cooler active all the time, so you're going to be farming a lot. And I think this playstyle sometimes might take you away from the objective, but it's not bad. The last thing you can do is you need to have the special spam gear set in order to do this, but you can add Respawn Punisher on the weapon and spam Tacticooler and pretty much respawn punish the entire team with a very reckless playstyle and not get punished for it yourself because you always have Cooler active. This is a playstyle that a lot of pro players are using on Tacticooler weapons. A pro Dualie player named Chase, you've probably heard of him. I've seen a build of his like this on Senduo Inc., and I have seen him play it on his videos a few times, but this is a super interesting one, and it also works on Dynamo as well. Alright, now let's talk about abilities. So there's 3 things to abilities that really determine how you're going to build around any weapon in this game, but it really affects Dapples because again, this weapon is super gear dependent. The first of the big 3 is mobility. Abilities such as swim speed and ink resistance are super helpful for this weapon. You could use run speed, but I don't really recommend it. The next one is utility, which consists of special charge up, special saver, sub power up, object shredder, and maybe special power up, but that last one again is kind of like run speed. Not super necessary, but you can use it. I think it's actually more worth it than run speed, in my opinion. And the last one is combat. Stuff like QR, comeback, respawn punisher, and sub defense, and haunt, question mark. I don't know. Haunt is good on Tetras, and Dapple is kind of similar to Tetras, so you could use it, but I don't think it's worth it. The other ones I mentioned besides haunt are good at looking into because they help you during fights and coming back from fights that you've lost. Again, you're going to be losing a ton of fights with this weapon, and also going to be winning a ton of crazy fights in style, so you're going to be wanting to run gear that helps you recover from fights and also during the fights. Some other ability opinions I have is for these Dapples, I don't think stealth jump is super worth it because you're going to be jumping to a lot of beacons, or if you're going to jump, you should probably jump to one of your teammates that's in a safe position. But since you're mostly going to be jumping to beacons, and if you do jump, you have dodge roll, so it's not super worth it to run stealth jump, but you can if you want to. I personally don't, because stuff like having one main of sub power up on my shoes or having object shredder is more worth it in most situations the way I play the game. Next is about sub power up. You don't always need a bunch of sub power up. It's definitely good on certain modes, but on Rainmaker, for example, your beacons are going to be constantly moving around, and there's other abilities that are going to impact the game a little bit better, so I don't really run tons of sub power up on Rainmaker specifically, because I'm going to be using my gear slots for stuff like object shredder and quick respawn and utility abilities and comeback. Sub power up is one of the most powerful effects on any beacon weapon, but you don't necessarily necessarily need it all the time. That's why it's good to have multiple gear sets to play the weapon multiple ways depending on the rotation. And the last opinion I have is Ninja Squid. I don't use Ninja Squid because I don't like being slow with the weapon, and if I don't want to be slow, I have to take up gear slots for swim speed. Again, you can build multiple sets of gear for this, but I think Ninja Squid is better on the Nouveau kit because that kit is more of a hard slayer and it's going to be sharking a lot more for kills. With Dapple, you're going to be sharking a lot more for different things than just kills. Also, you can play the game in a stealthy way that doesn't need Ninja Squid. I tried to use it in the beginning, but I was just too slow and I wanted other abilities on my gear. Again, if you really like Ninja Squid, go ahead. All of this stuff I'm saying is just my opinion, but it's the way I play the weapon and what helps me win the game. Now I'm gonna put a few images of the builds that I use on screen so you guys can really see how I play the weapon and what I like to use for certain modes. On Rainmaker, I'm always using Object Shredder because it's super good, and also if there's any crab tanks or any other objects like Wavebreaker, I can do a ton of damage and remove them if I'm in the right position to do so. So how do you actually play Dapple Dualies now that you understand the fundamentals of the weapon and how the gear works? The first is positioning. You always want to be with your team. If you're not with your team, you're going to be sharking for weird kills from weird angles, setting up beacons, or farming your special. But when time comes, especially in Rainmaker, you need to play with your team. Specifically, since this is mostly a Rainmaker weapon, the whole point of Dapples in Rainmaker, the Tacticooler kit, is you're going to be setting up beacons, getting picks, and if you get the wipeout or get a chance to push the Rainmaker, you will push the Rainmaker. Because your team doesn't always need a little pew-pew weapon going around trying to get kills and QRing and stuff. You need that sometimes in certain situations, but once the Rainmaker shield is popped, you need to carry it. It's honestly going to help your team a lot more. It depends on the situation, but I've found that if I just pick up the Rainmaker, better weapons on my comp can focus on the team while I'm carrying. Remember, Dapple is a weak weapon because it doesn't have a bomb. So when you're pushing Rainmaker specifically, you need all the lethal subs and specials you can get. While you're pushing Rainmaker, you don't need beacons and Tacticooler active all the time. That's why a lot of times I'll pop the shield, throw down my Tacticooler, and carry the Rainmaker myself. When fighting with the main weapon, you need to take advantage of your dodge roll in certain ways that are going to juke your opponent. A lot of Dapple players just dodge roll like pew pew, pew pew, pew pew, and they'll start shooting at people and it's super predictable. But remember, the way projectiles work in Splatoon is the way the velocity of them kind of arcs is if you move backwards or jump or anything, the projectiles will move in certain ways that might give you more range depending on where you are, if you have more height. So what I've found is when you're facing like an Octobrush, for example, if you dodge roll backwards in certain patterns on maybe upwards on a ramp, it really depends on what map, but you can really kind of get a little bit of extra range. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's the same way a shooter would try to aim upwards and jump in a certain way to get a little bit of extra range. Do not just spam dodge roll all nonchalant and stuff. Dodge roll is a mobility and combat tool, and it's not just for you to teleport around and be like, hoo hoo, haha, I'm over here, on the bed, off the bed.
Left, right, on the bed, off the bed. My name is Timothy. I'm speed. Ooh, ah. Agility's my middle name. Ooh, ah. Ooh, what's that in the closet? Let me show you move.
It's actually where all the skill of the weapon goes into. Now, you're going to be stealthing a lot, which means if you see your teammate fighting someone, you need to come and help them out by getting the kill or dealing more damage to that opponent from a stealthy angle. Try to come at them from an angle where they don't see you coming. Dapple is an extremely mobile weapon, so you can use stuff like Squid Roll to really help you out. Squid Roll can help you block certain shots, and it also acts as like an extra dodge roll. I've been getting really good at Squid Rolling, so I can use it almost like Tetra rolls, doing like a couple Squid Rolls and then dodge rolling. You can get pretty much almost the same effect as Tetra if you get good at Squid Rolling. And the most important part of this weapon is your decision making. Don't just run in and try to get kills. This is not going to help you out at all. You are just going to feed, and if you get kills without smart decision making, you won't get QR. What this means is if you're gonna rush in and get 1 kill every time, you're not impacting the board as much as if you were to get 2 or 3 kills on 1 life. Remember, QR is only for if you get no kills. If you can get 2 or 3 kills and die and you don't get QR, that's fine. In Splatoon, it's all about player advantage. A good team getting a huge player advantage and having their Dapple die is the best trade-off. Now, you can really play around the special with this because it gives you tons of QR. And once you have the special, you can play a little bit more recklessly, but still, you need to impact the board. If you're going to go for reckless plays, make sure you have your special charged and active. That's the whole point of Tacticooler on this weapon, is so you can play recklessly without any repercussions. Now with the beacon, the sub-weapon, it's really important that you position the beacon on the map in certain ways that affect your teammates. It's not really about affecting your opponents, because if you put the beacons too close to the spawn of your opponents in weird situations, they'll just blow them up and you won't get any use out of them. How I like to position my beacons is I'll pick 3 spots on the map and move them periodically. I'll have 1 spot close to my spawn, so it's a safe jump for anyone coming back in. I'll have 1 beacon in a weird spot in mid, and maybe 1 a little bit further up in mid, but I'll move these beacons around depending on what part of the map we have control of. If we don't have control of mid, I'm not going to be running in to put beacons in mid, because there's no point. If my team has control of mid, I will slowly start moving my beacons a little bit more forward to be a bit more aggressive, but as soon as we start losing control, I'll move them back so my teammates don't get spawn camped. Sometimes people will camp beacons, so keep that in mind. Beacons are cool because it allows 2 players to jump to a beacon, but if you jump to it, it completely destroys it. So remember, if you're going to use your beacons for yourself, put them back after they blow up so your teammates actually have a place to jump in. Sometimes if you're stealthing and someone sees you, you might be able to place a beacon as a kind of pseudo shield to maybe block shots, but you shouldn't be doing this all the time. It's super situational. I've only gotten used to this a few times when a 52 approached me and I needed to back up, but behind me was a wall, so I placed a beacon and it blocked shots and I was able to get up without getting shot, but that's super risky because it burns your whole ink tank. However, Dapples are extremely ink efficient, so you don't really need to run savers on this one. Definitely just don't run any savers whatsoever. Also, I forgot to mention, stuff like savers and last ditch effort is just not very good on this Dapple. If you're gonna run those, run them on the blue kit. This is not a last ditch effort weapon. Now, Tacticooler. You're going to want to put Tacticooler in a place where your teammates can get them. Placing them on the tower or next to the Rainmaker after you pop, or next to a power clam or in the zone is good, but don't like throw it out in front of the enemy team because no one's gonna want to go get it. When you place Tacticooler down, don't forget to do a little this way just in case so people notice. I really wish it would show Tacticooler on the map. I know it does show that little icon, but it would be kind of better if you could see it on the map, but maybe in a future update. Tacticooler is amazing because it gives your whole team QR. Even if your team is not running QR, once they get it, they can play as reckless as they want. Combined with good beacon placement, when you have Tacticooler on your whole team, if your team gets wiped out, it doesn't really matter because you'll be back in as quick as possible. That's the major benefit of Tacticooler, and running special charged up and special saver is good on the weapon because you can have it a lot. Again, you need to take advantage of Tacticooler, so when you have it, you can play a little bit more recklessly, but remember, if you do die, it's okay. Now let's talk about what modes this weapon is good on and what it struggles on. The maps in this game really determine what modes this thing is going to struggle on. The best mode for this weapon is Rainmaker. Just the combination of its entire kit makes Rainmaker games really good for it. Tacticooler lets you push Rainmaker faster. The QR is helpful. Beacons are a very tactical part of Rainmaker. They're not the best sub for this mode, but they do work on it. Again, if you're playing Rainmaker with Dapple, in most situations you are going to be carrying the Rainmaker, and that's honestly the part of the mode that's the most fun. Since you're one of the weakest weapons in the game, being able to turn your weapon into a super bazooka is kind of exhilarating. Splat zones. Jesus Christ, the maps on Splat Zones are pretty bad, and Dapple is completely trash on Splat Zones. Maybe the Nuevo kit is a little bit better on Splat Zones, but I think maybe if you're going to be playing the Tacticooler Dapple on Splat Zones, it's going to be a lot more harder for you to win games. Unless you're playing super hard, I'd kind of recommend staying away from it because there's just no way for you to get in efficiently. And spamming Tacticooler doesn't really get you in. It kind of just lets your whole team feed against that camping E-Leader or Hydra on Mahi. You know what I'm talking about. Tower control is pretty good for the weapon. Throwing Tacticooler on the tower is pretty good. It's not the worst mode for the weapon, but it's not the best. Beacons are really good on tower. Some of the tower maps have decent flanks. I know that the weapon is really good on Mako Mart tower. If you see Mako Mart in the rotation, you can totally win a ton of games using this weapon on that map. Still, some tower maps are difficult, like Mahi. There's not much you can do with it. It really depends on the map and mode, but yeah, tower overall, kind of a 3 out of 5 stars. Last is Clam Blitz, and I'd say it's kind of similar to tower control. You can really excel at this mode because it's a mode that you need to push an objective like Rainmaker. However, some of the maps are just weird for it. Unlike Rainmaker, where this thing just is kind of good on all maps and stuff, Clam Blitz is kind of weird, but it's super similar to Rainmaker with the way you push and capture the objective. I think this weapon is really good on offense in Clam Blitz, but it just struggles on defense, because you can't really poke with a bomb because you don't have one. Alright, the last part about this video is the matchups when it comes to fights. Against other dualies, it's not that bad. You kind of outspeed them because a lot of the longer range dualies are a little bit slower fire rate or slower movement in general. Splat dualies and other Dapple mains might sauce you, but the main thing you can do is just play better than them. Most shooters in this game are not that hard to fight against unless they see you first. If a shooter sees you first and starts poking with bombs or substrafing at you, you need to take a different position for like a juke angle or something. But most shooters, you can kind of roll up on them from a weird angle and delete them from the game. Some long-range shooters can just look at you and kill you, but if that happens, you weren't in a good position. Rollers will absolutely ruin you. This game has such bad netcode that sometimes a roller will flick at you and you'll try to roll behind it, and it might look like you rolled behind it, but the game will register you in front of it, and it will look like the roller kind of flicked in your opposite direction and you'll still die, which is super annoying. And also, Splat Roller will kill you from the weirdest ranges. Like sometimes you'll be at the very tip of the hitbox and it will still one-shot you. And that's just a part of the game. But because you have such short range, it's really hard to approach them. You really need to juke them, get behind them, try to come at them from an angle where their giant, massive hitbox has a weird spot where it's not the sweet spot one-hit kill, but like in a certain area on the side where you could take a little bit of damage and still kill them. Against rollers, you're always gonna probably take damage unless you're completely out of the way of their flick. Rollers are one of the biggest banes of your existence in this game, and I hate it. I really dislike fighting rollers with this weapon, but once you beat them, it feels so good. You just need to play better and faster than them. Dynamo can be easier to deal with than other rollers because it's so slow, but most of the other rollers like Flingza and Splat Roller will wreck you. Carbon Roller is kind of an even matchup. Brella. Nobody plays Brella, but you know, you can kind of counter them. Undercover Brella is an easy win. Tentabrella is kind of weird. I haven't seen much good tent mains. Good normal Brella players will kind of wreck you, but if you can move around their shield or out-damage their shield, you can kind of break the shield kind of fast because with normal Brella, it has about 500 HP, I'm pretty sure, and Dapple can do almost 500 damage in about a second and a half. Alright, most blasters are super free kills. Since blasters are slow and they really need to aim their shots, especially rapid, any of the non-one-shot blasters, you can kind of just run up on them and delete them. Good one-shot blaster mains will wreck you, but that's because they were just better at aiming. But most blasters are too slow and have a ton of downtime that if you roll up on them, you can kill them without them really being able to aim at you unless they're super good at the weapon. Against Blaster, it depends on the skill level of the player. Splatanas will completely counter you if you're not playing the game well. Splatanas have a ton of long-range pressure, and their close one-shot makes it so they can poke you from far away with their normal slashes, and then when you try to get close to delete them, they'll just kind of charge slash you. Stamper is really annoying to deal with. You just have to play better than them. Stringers, it's kind of a free kill, just don't let them one-shot you. Brush is annoying. Normal Brush is fine. It's a decent matchup. You can kind of outrange them. I think you have a bit more range than them. Octobrush is the same as Splat Rollers. You really need to kind of juke them or else they'll just outrange you. But Octobrush is going to hurt your feelings a lot. Next is Splatlings. They have a ton of long-range pressure, and the only way to really get up to them is you need to take advantage of their downtime. Nautilus and Ballpoint don't have that much downtime due to the way they work, but against Hydra or Heavy or Mini, not really. Against a lot of the heavier Splatlings, you need to wait for their downtime. Even then, they can kind of quick charge and kill you, but since they're a slow-moving weapon with kind of an awkward way to aim and shoot, you can take advantage of this by coming at them from weird angles. It's kind of similar to shooters, where you kind of just need to outplay them, but if they look at you, you're kind of and you need to take another angle. And last is sloshers. So Machine will wreck you, regular Slosher will wreck you, but Blob and Explo can be free kills if the player isn't good at the weapon. If the player is good, they can kind of work around you and maybe deal some damage and get you, but since they're kind of awkward to play, Explo and Blob are going to be easier to deal with. But Machine, V-Slosher, and Tri-Slosher are going to hurt you. Tri-Slosher is one of the biggest counters to Dapple, and it sucks to deal with. Regular Slosher just has a ton of range, and same with Machine. Machine has a huge hitbox, and it will do a ton of damage to you. You won't see it coming. Remember, with Machine, if you get hit once by Machine, you cannot get hit again. It's very rare that Machine is a 3-shot kill. I don't think it even can be. All the Sloshers can do an easy 2-shot kill except for maybe Explo. But with Sloshers, if you get hit once, you can't get hit again. Same with Rollers. If you get hit once, you can't get hit again. A lot of weapons are like this for kind of every class, but with Dapple, since you're going to be getting so close, it's really important that if you get hit once, just, the nightmares. Alright, I almost forgot Chargers, but the last is Charger. Just don't let them snipe you. It's similar to Stringers. Shorter range Chargers can kind of deal with you a little bit more easily if they're good at their aim, but most of the slower long range Chargers like E-Leader, if you kind of outroll them using Squid Roll and your Dodge Roll, you can get up to them and delete them, but you just can't let them snipe. You gotta be moving in ways that's hard for them to shoot at you. Alright, to conclude this video, we're gonna talk about the overall verdict. The way you're gonna be playing this weapon is mainly a hybrid support slayer. You're going to be wanting to go for picks, and if you're going to go for picks, you need to impact the player advantage. You need your special up as much as possible, and you need your beacons up so your teammates have safe places to come back if they die. A lot of people are running QR, so having fast beacons with sub power up and available beacons is good for other QR weapons on your team. This weapon, again, is super hard to play, and the community has mixed feelings about it. A lot of people don't like Dapple mains and don't like the weapon. A lot of people think it's and every time you run it on a comp, it kind of nerfs the comp. And that's true, but you can really build comps around it, especially in Rainmaker. It's very good in Rainmaker. You can excel with this weapon in every mode, but it's going to take a lot of practice, a lot of dedication, and a lot of gear building. Make sure you have multiple sets of gear for you to rely on, and be switching them depending on the rotation. Remember, as a Dapple main, you don't have to be stigmatized as a bad player that rolls around and tries to be a little sneaky dork. There's ways to play this weapon super efficiently and super well that will actually impact the game in a way that other weapons can't even dream of doing. You have insane support capabilities combined with amazing kill power and DPS and nice stealth and mobility. This is one of the fastest weapons in the game with the weirdest kit and main weapon combination. I've played Dapple dualies in Splatoon 2 the entire time of the game's lifespan. I have a ton of knowledge on how to play the weapon, but I can always get better, and of course I'm not the best Splatoon player or dualie player player or Dapple player in the game, but after trying every single weapon class and trying to switch off the weapon, I've realized that it's just not really something I want to do. The way the weapon plays is just the way I like to play Splatoon. I like using the support to help my team, and I also really like killing people. Just being able to delete people from the game as fast as possible is something I've always liked doing in any video game. I guess glass cannon is just kind of like a part of my playstyle in games in general. I want to make other videos on the other dualies and the new Vo kit of the Dapple just to like analyze a little bit more. I kind of share the same qualities as Chase, the pro player I mentioned before, where he's kind of the dualie guy. I also am a dualie guy. I kind of love all of the dualies. I'm excited for more dualies to be added to the game. I like to play Gluga as well, especially because its kit is super strong in this game, but I'm going to need a little bit more practice with it before I can make a video like this about it. Anyways, Dapple Gang Unite. We are not trash. We can actually be good in this game. It just requires a ton of commitment, and honestly, this weapon requires some of the most skill out of any weapon in Splatoon. If you keep practicing your team play and all that stuff, you know, you'll climb the ranks. It just takes a while. Anyways, thanks for watching. I hope this motivated y'all to improve at the weapon, and let me know your opinions in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.